So I'm just going to start off by reading Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 through 9. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And here's my favorite verse. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely and whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think on such things. So that's my favorite verse because unfortunately, growing up and a lot of my life, my mind was not focused on pure things and good things. So I guess just bring you through a little bit of a journey as to how everything happened and how it began. I think it probably goes back even further than this. I would say probably generational. But the first thing that I heard about it was I heard that when my mom was pregnant for me, she was playing with a Ouija board, and it told her that she was going to have a baby girl. So my mom has told me this story. So I know that it's been a long time. Growing up, first of all, I want to say I don't blame my parents. I feel like if they were here, I'd feel bad. They did not know the Lord. I don't know if they do now, but for sure. But I know then they didn't. But growing up, I watched a lot of scary movies. That's what I was putting into my mind. I would watch certain ones where I would literally memorize the words to the movies. That's what I was feeding myself. And when I was about 8 years old, I watched The Exorcist, and that really, that was scary. But I was very interested in it. Like Pastor Dan was saying, you can just become really curious, and I used to play the Ouija board with my friends, and even though I went to Catholic school and we did religion classes and they said not to use those things, I didn't understand why. I just knew that they said not to, but I thought, well, a lot of my friends are doing it who also go to this school or whatever, and they're doing it too, so definitely played a lot with that, and I became really, in high school, interested in angels. Just, thinking, reading a lot of books on angels and that kind of stuff. And then when I was in college, I started to do yoga. And in the yoga class, a lot of people think yoga is just exercise, or you can separate the spiritual from the physical, but that's not true. Yoga literally means one with God. I'm not one with God, but that's what the name means. And through each of the poses that you're doing in yoga, you're actually bowing down to certain Hindu gods. So I finally found what I was looking for with yoga. I just thought that was it. That was the coolest thing. I liked the exercise. I liked the spiritualness of it. I liked how the instructor could meditate, and I really wanted to be able to meditate like the instructor. And I went to a couple yoga ashrams, one in New York and one in Montreal, and where you learn to meditate. And couldn't quite get it like my instructor, but he really could empty his mind, which I've learned is not what we want to do. We want to fill our mind with Jesus. So in college, that's where I met my husband, Ian. He did not know the Lord either, and he started to do yoga as well with me, and I became pregnant with my first daughter, Ellie. And at that point, I really was searching. You know, I wanted something for her more than what I had. I knew that there was something that was, you know, spiritually special, and that I just didn't have it, but I wanted her to have it. So we started to go to a Unitarian church, and that didn't last long, but we tried that out, and then it was around the time of before Ian and I got married, and I was introduced to something called Reiki. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that, but my sister, Susie, she really wanted me to meet her friend, Ms. Michelle, and one day I was in St. Albans. I lived in New York at the time, but I was in St. Albans getting my hair done for the consultation for my wedding. And lo and behold, I was sitting next to Ms. Michelle. And I didn't know that that was who my sister wanted me to meet until I started to hear her talk about Reiki. So in my mind, like Pastor Dan was talking about how, you know, not everything that seems like it's from God is God. So in my mind, I was thinking, wow, this really must be from God. You know, I knew I was supposed to meet this girl, and here she is sitting right here next to me. And so we started talking, and anyway, so that was where we first met, and we just thought that it was all God. And it took her, skipping forward, many years to come to Jesus, but she has decided to give her life to Jesus, and she's actually been here a couple times. But anyway, so she was really involved in Reiki. She was a Reiki master, and I had started to go to become a Reiki master as well. You just give a lot of money to this person who opens you up. Pretty much what they're doing is they open you up to demons. But I didn't realize that at the time. What I thought it was is a healing force or whatever, and it comes from your hands. And so I started to become friends with her, and even when we couldn't see each other, she would give me Reiki, sometimes over the phone, and you could actually feel the energy from the Reiki. And you know, there is healing, but like Pastor Dan also said, with Satan, he's always the counterfeit. You know, Jesus is the true healer, but with this Reiki, it was the counterfeit healing. So I got involved with that, and so I had a lot of people praying for me that I didn't know were praying for me at the time. I'm very thankful for those people in New York. They told me later that they were praying because they knew what I was involved in. And I was feeling a little bit of the tug of Jesus, but I didn't necessarily want to. I would try to make sense of it in a different way, so one day I was taking a nap with my daughter Ellie. She was an infant. Well, she was probably 2, 1.5, 2. And like Pastor Dan said, with the person with the Ouija board, how sometimes that person gets woken up a lot in the middle of the night. Well, that was starting to happen. And I was just taking a nap with my daughter, and I woke up, and I saw a light coming from the corner of my room. And my first thought was fear. But then I said to myself, oh no, it's all good, it's all love, whatever. And I pushed the fear aside, and my daughter was having stomach issues. So I remember putting my hand on her stomach and asking the light to heal her stomach. And then almost immediately it left. And I thought, that's strange. I wonder why. And then so I got up and I started to do the dishes, and then about 10 minutes later, my daughter came out of the bedroom into the kitchen with a book in her hands. And I had a bookshelf in my bedroom tacked up with a tapestry so she couldn't get into the books and make a mess. But somehow she was able to get to that one book that I hadn't really even ever looked at or remembered that I had. A friend of mine had given it to me in high school. Must be when I was involved with the angel stuff, because the book was called The Truth About Angels. And I opened it up, and the first thing I see is that Satan will come and deceive as an angel of light. And I wish I could say from that moment on I decided to give my life to Jesus and stop doing what I was doing, but I didn't. He was definitely warning me to stop right there, and I didn't. So after that is when things got pretty rocky. And poor Ian, keep in mind we were just married, so things were a little crazy. He didn't understand anything that was going on, and he worked nights, which made it doubly difficult. So one day I then meet a man from South Africa who was an insurance salesman, and he came into our home, and lo and behold, we started to talk about spiritual stuff. Apparently that's why he was there. He was very into voodoo and all sorts of things, and told me that wherever he goes, he has an entourage of beings following him. And he really opened me up to the spiritual world. And I thought it was neat. I thought it was cool at first. I'm not going to go into any detail because it's not important, but I thought, okay, this is good. This is all good. Although I will say, in the way back of my mind and in my heart, I knew something wasn't right. So one night, I can't remember all the details, but Kuna, Ms. Michelle, myself, my sister Susie, and some other people were asked to go to a house in Isle of Mont. I think it was Isle of Mont. And where apparently I don't remember now if it was I think it was a mother and a father were murdered by one of their children, something like that. So we were asked to go there to clear the energy of this home. So we went, and at the time Ian was babysitting Ellie before he had to go to work. And I went and went to this place, went outside, never went inside the house, it was locked up, but went outside to clear the energy. And anyway, I remember being around their pool, and all of a sudden, I really felt stabbing pains in my stomach, like it was real, like really bad stabbing pains. And at that point, I was like, I've had it, I want to go home. This is enough. And so I remember I was in the back seat with somebody, and Kuna and Ms. Michelle, I believe, were in the front. And I remember at that moment, I said, that's it, I'm running to Jesus. I just knew in my heart that that's what I needed to do. And the first thing that I heard after I said that was from Kuna, and sometimes I wonder if he was the devil himself or what, I don't know. But he said, there's nothing he can do for you now. And this was coming from a guy who earlier in the night was sitting on the floor with everybody around him spouting off Bible verses. And he knew the Bible back and forth. And he just said, there's nothing he can do for you now. So I got home that night, and of course, Ian had to go to work. And I told Michelle, I'm like, you're not leaving me here by myself. So she stayed the night with me, which I don't know if it made it any better. But that was definitely the worst night of my life, that night. We saw things spiritual that were very scary. I believe there were points where we were either, I think we, there was possession that went on and other things that were just terrible. And we just wanted to feel the absence of fear. We couldn't shake the fear no matter what we did. I made tomato soup and grilled cheese thinking, okay, this will help me to feel better, or nothing. The fear just would not go away. No matter what we did. I had an old Bible that I had up on a shelf, and I took that down and thought it might have some special powers and had that with me, but that didn't make the fear go away. I think now maybe what we were feeling was almost the God taking away his presence from us. I think that a lot of times we take it for granted that God's with us and his peace is with us, and without it, it was terrible, terrible, terrible fear. So needless to say, after that, there were many, many, many sleepless nights with a new baby and a new husband, and just things that aren't important to go into detail about, but things that definitely were not of God. But thankfully, I had given my life to Jesus, and a lot of the people who had been praying for me, I spoke with, and I started to go to a church in New York, North Country Christian Alliance Church, and I wish I could say that it was a magic pill and everything stopped and everything was bright and sunshiny, but I still had the consequences of sin to deal with, even though I gave my life to Jesus. I still deal with consequences every now and then, but it's nothing like it was. So after listening to Pastor Dan, like I said earlier, it's so, my chains are broken. It feels so good to know that I am not where I was, and that if Jesus can do that with me, then Jesus can do that, can free anybody. One of my other favorite verses is that there is no fear in love, and that God's perfect love casts out all fear. And to know now that I'm a child of God, and I was snatched out of darkness and placed in the light, and I know Jesus is my Savior, and I want to tell everybody what he did for me. I do not want anybody, I only had a taste of hell. And I just can't imagine what people who don't know Jesus, that they will live in eternity with what I went through, but 1,000 times worse forever. That's something hard for me to fathom. So I'm just going to leave us off with one verse. See if I can remember where it is. Okay. 1 John 4, 1 through 4. Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. This is how you can recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. But every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming, and even now is already in the world. So that's my testimony, and thank you for listening and praying.